TechAfrica News Podcast from Africa for Africa. In partnership with Smart Africa. Good afternoon from Johannesburg to a new edition of TechAfrica News Podcast. Today we're exploring a critical driver of Africa's development, AgTech. For years we've seen digital innovation across the continent transform our cities, but what happens when those same powerful tools and platforms reach the very heart of our economies? Our rural areas, semi-rural areas, and the smallholder farmers who are so vital to our food security and our growth. Today I have the privilege of speaking with a leading voice in this field, Aliou Maïga, the Director of Financial Institutions Group for Africa at IFC. Nice to meet you. Nice to have you here.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you too.
To start, let's get a clear picture. What exactly is an AgTech and why are these companies so vital for African agriculture, especially given the significant funding gaps which are currently existing?
Yeah. No, thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity. Before getting to the AgTech, I want to just maybe give a couple of points about why we are doing this. IFC is seen very often as an investor. Okay, this is how many people perceive it, but we are really a development finance institution. So our mandate is to help countries develop, prosper, and become more stable. And for a long time, that has been seen in the lenses of poverty eradication as a World Bank Group. And we have a new president who really make it more concrete and more pragmatic. He redefined our mandate and development generally as creating jobs. That's the best way to fight poverty. That's the first message. Second thing is, if you want to create jobs in Africa, the biggest employer in Africa is agriculture. So unless you manage to make agriculture more productive, not only for food security, but job creation or job improvement, you're going to miss maybe half of the potential. So that's why we are doing this.
And is it due to the geographical environment we have in Africa? I mean, most of the land is probably farming land.
Yes, absolutely. And most countries, GDP is 40%, 20 to 40% of GDP is agriculture. But employment side, 40 to 80% is agriculture. Most countries, agriculture represent more than 50 to 80% of employment.
So there's a huge untapped.
Exactly. So now coming back to AgTechs, I'm a technology person, converted into development after a few years in management consulting. So I've done technical and operation, I've done strategy, and now I'm more in leadership in development. Technology has transformed every sector that it was injected into. Okay, you look at finance 50 years ago, okay, and more recently the whole fintech revolution. Yeah. But finance was easy because you don't move physical goods; you only move, electrons. Essentially, it's information. You look at manufacturing, how it has evolved in the past 20, 30 years. Most car manufacturing companies now, it's mostly robotics. Okay? But for some reason, agriculture has remained out of that movement. And what we're trying to do is to inject technology in agriculture to make it efficient and productive as much as technology has done for other sectors. So AgTech companies are essentially fintech companies who actually provide all the other services that a farmer needs or a cooperative needs to become productive in their operations. Okay, so it's financing is just the end of the chain, but what enables financing is to reduce risk and to reduce the cost of servicing farmers, and those are the two key aspects that AgTechs can help solve, and hopefully with that we can finance agriculture more and make it more productive.
So we can say the lending gap for smallholder farmers is still a huge problem.
It is.
So we've seen how AgTechs are helping lenders to de-risk their loans, obviously.
Yeah.
Could you share some real-world examples of how they're making this happen and what that means for farmers on the ground?
I think the most advanced experience we have with AgTech companies to date as IFC after 2 years, 3 years of piloting and deploying is in Morocco, where we started engaging with a small AgTech companies called Sowit. We started with advisory services to help them just strengthen their operations and also connecting them to a microfinance institution called Al Amana. Okay, this was like about 2 years ago. And when you connect companies through technology, it takes time. It takes 6 months, even in a normal company, to implement a new system. So piloting is very important to make sure that all the plugs, works well. So we started with a pilot of about 500 hectares, which was quite successful. Productivity of the yield went up by 30%, but more than the yield, the income of farmers went by more than 50% because the quality of the crops that came out of that, technology managed process is much better. And then we work with the same company and the same microfinance institution to do a bigger pilot, but almost more like a production, which was about 3,000 hectares. And we added a bank to it because I think you need the microfinance and banks to cover the whole spectrum of small versus medium-sized farm. And right now we are at the end of the campaign for a 5,000 campaign, 5,000 hectares campaign. And the outcome is very good. And the next campaign, we are preparing for 20,000 hectares. So it's just to tell you how fast those AgTech can, scale by leveraging existing infrastructure, both financial and agriculture. And that's the best example we have. But of course, we have many other examples. In Nigeria, we're working with a company called Babangona. They were more advanced in their journey, because they provide the full service to farmers, including market access. So they buy actually the crops, or they store the crops for the farmers with a market pricing risk management. So when they sell, they just share the profit with the farmers. So in short, we have many examples that show that if you inject technology and through AgTechs, and the AgTechs, by the way, is not only a platform behind, all right? Because every AgTech actually, they call themselves phygital, meaning physical and digital. They have agent on the ground, because without that, it doesn't work. And the agents are really usually part of the community, of the farming community. They pick like young people who are educated but unemployed, and train them 2 weeks, 1 month to using their devices and providing advice. And then the rest is done through technology. So they all have agents on the ground, to work with farmers on the ground. So in a nutshell,
it's more like an aggregation on the ground. Then.
It is more like aggregation, but it's beyond that. I would say AgTechs, really, if you think of it, is more like a fintech company that provide agronomic services, okay, that organize the logistics of the entire farming campaign, okay, and then that organize the insurance side of it, because it is a mandatory requirement. And finally, it's organize the access to market by contracting before the campaign. So you actually make sure that all the aspects of a campaign are really controlled in a way to reduce risk. And because of technology, the cost also goes down to serving, in terms of serving farmers. So you end up in a situation where you reduce the risk by connecting all the dots, and then you also reduce the cost of servicing by being the servicing company. The AgTechs actually help banks not worry about managing a portfolio of farmers. So it's a win-win for both the AgTech companies, the financial institutions, and and of course IFC has a DFI.
So they create kind of investable units.
Exactly. Exactly.
Very interesting. So beyond just financing, so how are AgTechs connecting farmers to things like quality seeds, modern equipment, and new markets? And what would you say are the real impacts of this on farmers' income and their crop yields?
Like I said, we have a model where the AgTech company provide like 6 major, I would say, services for the AgTech. I mean, for the sector. But the first one is they provide a digital profile of farmers and farms. Okay, that's a minimum. And then they also contract and provide agronomic services like, I don't know, sowing, like seeds, like fertilizers. Not only they contract, they actually organize the delivery of it in a timely manner. So, and then they also organize the mechanized services like harvesting, and finally they organize the offtake. So, in a way, really, you end up looking at the farmer almost like a landlord who has his land, and somebody organizes everything, but he's the one who owns everything. And then at the end, you share the profit, along the value chain. So really, this is what the AgTechs provide in terms of services. So they actually provide the whole services to a farmer, but in a way that is controlled through technology. I'm sure you are aware of ERP systems, right? So imagine a bank running on a spreadsheet. Do you think that's possible today? It's not possible. Okay. So a farmer running without technology and without any kind of control on how he accesses seeds, how he accesses fertilizers, because many times this is a government control environment. And sometimes delays happens, and most of the time delays happens actually.
And very strongly regulated.
Exactly. By actually allowing a market mechanism and allowing AgTech companies to organize this for farmers, you actually manage it very, very digitally, and it's very precise, like an ERP system. So I call it really the AgTechs like an ERP, behind every farmer, a virtual one. So they organize the operations, they organize the logistics, and they organize the market access.
So what would you say are the biggest challenges as of today?
I think the biggest challenge has always is making sure that people understand something as new and radical as this approach to agriculture. Most countries, agriculture is run by agricultural economists. Okay, I work for the biggest economics firm in the world, it's the World Bank, and I don't have anything against it. But what I'm saying is that sometimes innovation comes from changing fields. It comes from people from outside looking at the sector, but they have to work together. So the first biggest challenge is to get to a point where the incumbent who run the sector, who manage the sector, understand the need to have some kind of innovation into how it is done. That's the first, it's really about mindset and how to change that. The second one is really, I would say, also mindset, but more in terms of banks and how they see agriculture. And in most banks, they do the post-harvest side, which is very simple, right? But the pre-harvest side is very
they don't
complicated.
Like the risk.
Exactly, right? And they don't like it because they don't understand it and they cannot manage it. But if somebody does it for them, most of them are actually very eager to do it. If you have an asset that is de-risked and you make some profit of it, why would you say no? There's no reason. So all the banks we talk to, when you tell them how this model works, and we also tell them as a DFI, whatever risk you are not comfortable with, we are willing to take it,
True.
while you build the capacity and the comfort. So banks are very excited about this. In fact, our pipeline for banks in this sector today is more than $500 million, but the platform is still being developed before it is launched. So it's really changing the way people look at this, but do it in a way that you make sure that it actually works. That's why we do a lot of piloting. Because a problem that is old, 5 decades, 6 decades old. Since independence, African countries have been struggling with this. Saying you can fix it in 3 months or 6 months, honestly, would not be reasonable. But and you have to make sure that whatever you propose actually works. That's why we do those pilots. And we started 3 years ago, and now we have many of them. We have we have assessed almost 15 AgTech companies covering the entire continent. And we have engaged with 4 or 5 of them. And the plan is to build their capacity so we can engage with them and connect them to our banking network. IFC is the largest financier in the financial sector in Africa. We have more than 150 financial institutions between banks, microfinance, fintech companies, that we work with. So while we have to be very careful in the way we design and launch this. Once it is established, I think the scale up can go very, very fast, like the one we saw in Morocco.
It's actually very interesting. I just would like to come back to a point you raised where you said we need a change of mindset. So as TechAfrica News, we had this conversation, probably hours of conversations already in the podcast, and through several sectors, from health to connectivity, associations. And we always came across that we need a change of mindset, how we perceive things, how we look at things, and how we try to probably use or leverage from technology as a potential. So, but how can we push people to really accelerate in the process of changing the mindset?
I think when people first, they see on paper that there is benefit for them, and then they see in reality that it actually is true, they actually, move along. Internally, we have major initiatives for job creation, and one of them is agri-related, in the World Bank Group. And now, if you look at the way we are looking at agriculture at the World Bank Group level, the first thing is, of course, the challenges that are there. The second thing is the opportunities that are even bigger, And the third one is technology has the way to actually solve the problem. So we came a long way in the past 2-3 years, and in fact, the market itself picked up on the idea faster than IFC has been able to deploy it. So today, you talk about agriculture, most people say technology, because if you really think of it, the reason why it was not applied to agriculture is because people see agriculture as what you started with, rural.
Or what you see in the shelf at the end, or what you pick in the shelf.
Yes, I think that's. But I want to emphasize one thing, which is that agriculture has not been made exciting for people to look at. Okay, and the whole idea about this approach is also to inject technology to make it exciting for even youth to look at it. Okay, both on the tech side, but also on the farming side. If you have 5 hectares that you operate with technology, satellite imaging, and so, as a young, worker or entrepreneur, it's very exciting. So that excitement really or lack of it have prevented people from, looking at agriculture in a serious way. But I think this is really helping bringing excitement, but also a solution. And that really makes a difference in how people perceive and how you can convince people to come on board.
I have to admit, when you mentioned that there's the biggest job potential, it's actually quite logical, but I never thought about that in such a way. So I think it's also how we see things farming. It never would have crossed my mind, but it's actually, if you look at it from a holistic perspective, you see that it also brings in the most substantial business opportunity because it's quite secure.
Yeah.
Once you have your farm, everyone needs food.
Yeah.
So use technology to make it easier for yourself and leverage from it.
Yeah. And I think, on the job side, what my view is, a job can be defined in many ways. Okay, a farmer is an employee, self-employed, or working for a cooperative or for a corporation. But if you have a family-run farm, and most of them are less than 1 hectare, okay, but the productivity of those farms are 20% of what it could be, or 30%, just because of the lack of skills and logistics and system to make it, productive and predictable. If you can solve that and you improve somebody's job by 25, 30, 50%, for me, it's a new job. Okay, so if I were to change job today and I increase my salary by 25%, 30%, I would be very happy. Right? So, the whole concept of jobs, in my mind, when you transform somebody's life and income, you can call it a job or not, but in actuality, it's a new job for the person.
Yeah, I fully agree. So data is becoming just as important as the harvesting itself, obviously. So how are AgTechs using information from satellites, mobile phones, and transactions to help banks better to assess risks and providing more working capital?
Yeah. I think the whole concept behind this is to digitize so that you have visibility. And visibility is what to reduce the risk, because if this to me is like fog in English. It's like you don't see enough. But if somebody cut the fog, then you see clearly, then you de-risk, right? So the whole digitalization actually just bring visibility in understanding the farmer. So some companies have more than 100 parameters on a farmer and the farm. So beyond, including psychometrics, for example, and for sure the farm, they have a geo mapping of the farm, but not only of the farm, but the area cultivated on the farm every campaign, because those are two different things. That's one thing. And the second thing is, by digitizing the whole supply chain for the farmer, from input provision to mechanized services provision to market to insurance, you probably bring the biggest, I would say, data source for the economy, but also transparency for government in understanding this critical sector and how to make it not only work, how to design product that better serve farmers, but also how to design better policies. So the whole design, the whole, I would say one of the reasons that I'm really excited about this is the transparency aspect, which is essentially the data part. Without data, it's very hard to manage things. But if you have the data and you have the technology and now you have AI, you can do whatever you want. So it's really, the potential is huge, and beyond only farming and jobs, because ultimately, if you look at most African countries, tax collection is very low. Right? Why?
Except in the mobile sector.
Mobile sector, but mobile sector is very unique, right? And it's very controversial. Apart from 3 countries, this country, maybe Morocco and maybe Mauritius, I don't know where, tax collection in Africa the average is about 16-17%. Okay? The reason why? Because most of the economies are informal. You don't have visibility. You don't have the data. And therefore, you cannot really collect tax efficiently. But if you can digitize the most important part of the economy, not only the farmers, but their suppliers, because once you digitize the farmers, the suppliers who are SMEs, okay, and then their off-takers, you have complete visibility of the biggest part of the economy. And then you can decide if you tax and how you tax. So this data approach, it goes way beyond just serving the farmer. is a very powerful tool to actually also what economists refer to as domestic resource mobilization. But you have to do it in a way that does not kill the whole thing, right? Because if you start taxing, massively, before it's even developed and accepted, it can, stall the process. But if you do it smartly, this is a good way for government also to
have a new revenue stream.
New revenue stream, but also new tools to refine policies.
Okay. But at the first step, you need
the data.
and
sure.
a proper digital infrastructure
Yeah.
so that they can be digitized.
Digital infrastructure, the cost is high, but most countries today, you have mobile coverage almost everywhere. It may be expensive, or it may be just 3G or 4G.
It depends. Especially if you look at the farming sector, I would doubt it. I think satellite, rural areas are very hard to connect.
Look, I'm from Mali, okay?
Yeah.
I can tell you my village is like 1,000 kilometers from the capital. Everybody has mobile. In fact, people have social media, okay? So I'm not too concerned about, yes, there is need to improve what can be done with the digital infrastructure, but it is there. It may be that most countries are only at 3G instead of 4G or instead of 5G, okay? It may be that there is still need for maybe extra effort for last mile connection. But if you look at mobile coverage across Africa, countries, just mobile access, maybe, meaning, voice calls and, SMS, I think it's quite there. What is not there is the digital, the level of, I would say, sophistication, 3G, 4G, 5G, but also the use cases of that. But I would argue that, honestly, most African countries' mobile coverage is quite high. It's probably 70% average. So it's not low. It's just that we don't necessarily look at it that way.
Yeah.
And like I said, you have agents on the ground, okay, who are connected.
Yeah.
Those agents, they have mobile phone, they have essentially motorcycles to go around, and they have a device to connect to the back end and work. So I think digital infrastructure may not be perfect, but it's not the major barrier. The major barrier is the solution to the problem itself, which AgTechs provide.
Okay, I hear you. So the IFC has an ambitious goal to reach, correct me if I'm wrong, 5 million farmers by 2030. So what will be the simple, powerful metrics you will be looking at, knowing that AgTech is genuinely making a difference in Africa?
Well, my simple metric is number of hectares. Okay, how many hectares are you bringing under this new approach? Okay, to increase yield. Okay. Across Africa, okay. If farming number of farmers, it is linked to number of hectares, but hectares are real because that's really what is cultivated.
It's more precise.
It's more precise and it's cultivated, okay. And of course, it can also translate into jobs. There are models where you can proxies that you can use to measure the job implications. But I think the simplest way of looking at agriculture is number of hectares and the yield on those hectares, okay? The 5 million hectares, honestly, is just something that we picked as a team. And this is only for rice, wheat, and maize. And if you look at Africa, across Africa, those three crops are cultivated on 55 million hectares, roughly. 65, okay? So we're talking about 10% of rice, wheat, and maize. But obviously, if we have the resources and if the market picks up, honestly, 5 million is very small. We just signed an agreement with a couple of AgTech companies in Ethiopia. Ethiopia has more than 8 million, farmers or whatever.
Yeah.
And Ethiopia has definitely rolled out infrastructure. If there is one thing that they have done very well is infrastructure in general. Power, roads, industrial zones, and telecom now. And we signed with one of the AgTech companies, this is public information, to reach 1 million farmers by 2028 or 2029. And once you reach them, then you can deploy this service. So honestly, 5 million is just a starting point. I think we should aim for much more, but obviously it requires resources that I cannot commit. So I have to start with what I can commit to and get done.
Oh, but sounds exciting.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Absolutely.
That's for sure. So finally, with AFIS this year focusing on mobilizing Africa's own capital for development.
Yeah.
So how can AgTech and FinTech Wave help channel domestic investment into building more resilient food systems?
Well, I think, when we talk about Africa building the financial sector, it needs to finance its economy and its development.
Yeah.
Okay. And those are two different things, the nuances, right? Economy is just the general economy, SMEs, corporations, retail, households, and so forth. And development is really about major projects that actually affect development. So that's the nuance I'm trying to make. But given what's happening in the world today regarding aid, I mean, you know what's happened in a major, donor donor countries, right? They're all cutting on aid.
Yeah.
That's the first thing, and then you also have a lot of constraint, both in terms of compliance and the regulations that has pushed many major banks to exit Africa. So Africa has to develop its own financial sector that can support its economies and development. And that's what the AFIS will really try to focus on. And if you look at the size of banks in Africa, when I started covering, I don't know, Nigeria or whatever, the banks were in the range of maybe, $250 million size or maybe less. Today, you pick any of them, they are 20 billion plus.
Yeah.
Okay, or 15 billion plus or 10 billion plus. The point is that they've become very, very big and we don't realize. The second thing is that I had the opportunity to work in Asia, and I worked with a company that probably you all know called Alibaba. And they have a financial institution group called Ant Financial. Ant has been able to develop solutions where they can actually help retail customers invest $1. Okay, so the cost of servicing is so low that you can actually do $1 transactions in government securities if you want, or mutual funds. So the solutions are there to really make both access to finance or access to financial services, both on the liability side but also on the asset side, very, very effective. And with the whole dynamics around aid, around global financial sector, or even global geopolitics, Africa needs to build its own solution and self-reliance, and it is possible with technology. And but
so technology is not the obstacle.
No, it is not that it is not an obstacle. What I'm saying is that if you, like what we are doing in agriculture, if you apply it to many, many other sectors, you could unlock a lot. But somebody has to obviously think about it and do it. So I'm very optimistic. I was mentioning the tax collection in most countries. If you improve by 1%, 1 percentage point or 2 percentage point, it's a huge amount in Africa. Just think of it. And most countries can do that quite easily, if you ask me. To go from 17 to 20 or 18 is not a big deal. And I think it's doable. And if you can think that way, then you can really start building approaches that really can bring self-reliance, which we need in Africa because, like I said, the whole aid concept is becoming very challenged. I don't know how long it will last, but my view is that it's not reversible. So it's going to be very difficult unless we build our own strong financial sector that can support our development and our economies. So that will be the AFIS. And of course, AgTech is just one sector. I mean, you can pick the SME sector, which is just general,
Yeah.
Whatever you cannot put into a specific sector, you call it SME.
Yeah.
But you can look at AgTech generally. But SMEs, I would say generically, a lot of issues around SMEs is really about information asymmetry. Okay. And those are also data issues, therefore technology issues. So we can work on solutions like supply chain finance. The potential of supply chain finance, if designed and deployed very effectively, is massive compared to what banks do. When banks lend to an SME based on collateral, they only rely on the SME. But if you have a supply chain solution in a country that cover, let's say, 50% of the corporate that are well known by banks, so that the risk become more of a corporate risk perception than the SME risk perception, and you can deploy this solution, the potential to scale SME financing is much faster than generic SME financing. Just one example. So I think that's what I meant by really finding solutions to specific sectors where collectively you really improve visibility, data and and then you can really refine product and services and continue to improve financial inclusion and access to credit.
How do you see the role of AI in this whole field?
AI, to me, the way I look at AI is like, if you ask people 20 years ago, how do you train people and build skills?
Yeah.
What I would say is that in the past, 100% of the skills used to be in people's head.
Yeah.
Today, it may be only 20%. But that's all you need. The rest you can use AI to solve it.
True.
So to me, that's really the whole concept.
That's a good explanation.
Look at, if I say an agricultural agent, those AgTech agent on the field, they can take a picture of a field, and then there is a system that analyzes that image and tell you exactly if the crop is progressing well, if the yield is good, if there is fertilizers, put in a way that is not, balanced across the field, all those things. But a human being cannot do it. Yeah. But does it need to have the skills really? No, just need somebody to provide the solution. One example our president used in post-spring meetings, and really, I think convince people about the fact that you can, with technology, you can solve smallholder farmer issues, is that you can take a picture of a plant and a system can tell you what disease the plant is suffering from, and what do you need to apply as a solution. That's how fast it can be. So you don't even have to be very knowledgeable. You just need to have a device and a system behind you who can help you solve a problem for a farmer.
Makes sense. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your time. It was a very interesting, insightful conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Me too. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
I hope we meet up 2030 to discuss the 5 million.
Before that.
Before that. That's good. That's good. Thanks for your time. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time too. Thank you.